In a small town near the banks of the Nile, there lived a man named Yusuf. Known as a respected merchant, Yusuf had built a comfortable life through hard work and dedication. However, as his wealth grew, so did his sense of pride. He believed his success was solely the result of his own efforts and had little regard for the less fortunate. One afternoon, an old beggar knocked at his door. His clothes were tattered, his hands calloused from hardship, and his voice weak from hunger. "Brother Yusuf," he pleaded, "I have not eaten in days. Could you spare some food or a small donation for a fellow Muslim in need?" Yusuf looked at the man with disdain. "I worked hard for what I have." "What did you do?" "Nothing comes for free," he said coldly, dismissing the beggar without a second glance. That night, Yusuf had a peculiar dream. He found himself in a vast, empty desert, standing before an enormous scale. On one side of the scale was his entire fortune, gold coins, fine silks, jewels, and treasures piled high. On the other side was a single grain of wheat. A radiant figure, dressed in white, appeared beside him. "This is your scale, Yusuf. You will be judged by the weight of your deeds. On one side are all your riches, on the other, the smallest of acts, the grain of wheat." Yusuf scoffed, thinking surely his wealth would outweigh a mere grain. But as he watched, the scale tipped unexpectedly. The grain of wheat, though small, began to weigh heavier than all his riches combined. "How can this be?" Yusuf cried. "How can a grain be heavier than a mountain of gold?" The figure replied, "This is the grain of food you could have given to the hungry man today. The wealth you hold is temporary. It belongs to this world. But the small kindness you withheld, even something as insignificant as a grain of wheat, is eternal in the sight of Allah. For Allah sees not the weight of gold, but the weight of your heart." Yusuf awoke in a panic, beads of sweat dripping down his face. He couldn't shake the image of the grain of wheat tipping the scale, its weight crushing his soul. The next day, Yusuf set out to find the beggar. He searched every street, asked every merchant, but the old man was nowhere to be found. Distressed, he turned to the mosque for guidance and spoke to the local imam about his dream and his arrogance. The imam listened and said, "Yusuf, Allah gives us signs to awaken our hearts. What matters to him is not how much we have, but how we use what we've been given." The Prophet said that even a smile is charity. Every small act of kindness weighs more in the hereafter than all the riches of this world. Yusuf knew he had been wrong, that his pride had blinded him to the true purpose of wealth, helping those in need. He vowed to change his ways, not for the approval of others, but for the sake of Allah. In the weeks that followed, Yusuf became known for his generosity. No beggar left his door empty-handed, and he often went out of his way to find those in need. He realized that true wealth wasn't measured in gold but in the compassion one extends to others. Years later, as Yusuf grew older and his wealth began to fade, his heart remained light. He knew that when his time came, the weight of a grain of kindness would be worth more than all the riches he could have ever earned. Moral of the story: even the smallest acts of kindness hold immense weight in the eyes of Allah. Wealth is a test, not for personal pride but for helping others. The value of what we give, even if it's just a grain of food, far exceeds the material riches of this world when done with sincerity and compassion.